for the common good. It could be a study anywhere in the world. The furniture shows signs of wear and tear, but it is well cared for, repaired rather than replaced. There are cobwebs in that hard-to-reach corner above the bookshelves. The dozen or so books piled haphazardly within easy reach of the high-backed chair are glutted with bookmarks. Papers litter the wide desk, held down with a misshapen lump of poorly glazed, orange-striped clay that is meant to be either a cat or a bear. In the corner near the door, 3 increasingly large swords hang in the weapon rack beside a comfortable stool. There are oils and cloths, a whetstone, and a chipped clay mug neatly laid out on the neighbouring side table. Amidst the plethora of old notes and sun-faded maps pinned to the whitewashed walls are a scattering of brightly coloured drawings. Houses, clusters of people, what might be a dog, and in pride of place a messy watercolour painting of a scowling stick figure with steel grey hair and a sword, and shaky letters beneath it spelling out Oma. The door creaks open. A scowling woman with steel grey hair enters, closes it carefully behind her, and leans back against it for a long minute. She wears a damp dress uniform, woolen leather made gaudy with ribbons and medals. She hangs the wet coat carefully on a hook by the door, but tosses the hat carelessly onto a table in the corner. It slides off, lands on the floor, and she ignores it. She loathes the hat. At the desk, she lowers herself creakily into the high-backed chair and breathes a satisfied sigh. A second memorial service in as many weeks. 2 hours stood in the rain, doing her best to hide how much her knees hated her. Nobody would blame her if she skipped one, or rather, nobody else would blame her. They'd nod sagely if they mentioned it at all, and talk knowingly about how much work she must have done. They would never say out loud that the real problem is that she is not as young as she was. She hates them for their compassionate understanding sometimes. She opens a bottle, pours generously, raises her glass to nobody in a silent salute, and downs the lot with a grimace. She stares off into the middle distance, sighs, and pulls some of the papers toward her. She picks up the paperweight that is either a cat or a bear. A smile creases her face, and for a moment there's a hint of that fiery young captain who would march a day and half a night through a thunderstorm and still be ready to fight anyone who got in her way. The little figurine is set aside carefully, and she starts to read. She glances up at one of the maps above the desk, frowning as she tries to get some feel for unfamiliar places in a country she has not visited in 15 years or more. Then she selects a fresh quill and a pot of ink, without really looking, and begins to write. The sound of pen on parchment is swallowed by the rain pattering against the window. Overview. Each season, the civil service prepares a summary of the Empire's relationship with the foreign nations, based on communications received from their ambassador, along with any useful intelligence gathered from other sources. While the Senate and the other houses of imperial power may respond to these offers, it is important to note that it is the appropriate ambassador that the foreign power will expect to hear from. Their communication with the foreign power is the primary element that will determine the tenor of any response. Among the 6 great powers, the Commonwealth are perhaps the closest allies the Empire has. Their militant society, committed to the idea of ensuring the greatest good to the greatest number of people, does not see eye to eye with the Empire on all matters, but they clearly respect them. The Empire shared their mastery of magic with the magicians of the Commonwealth, and the Commonwealth soldiers fought and died alongside the Freeborn in the fall of Siroc against the Grendel. Both nations know they must eventually come to blows. Empire and Commonwealth alike are dedicated to extending their influence over the whole world, but for now they can be friendly at least. The Commonwealth ambassador to the Empire is Militär Attaché Lieutenant Schoningen of Die Stahlhalle in the port city of Volkova, a veteran soldier who reports to the generals who hold their reins of political power in their nation. An old campaigner, they generally speak plainly and as honestly as any politician can when dealing with their imperial counterpart. War in Lantir. The Commonwealth is locked in an all-out war with the Amish. The borders between the two nations are heavily fortified, and much of the fighting is taking place in the city-states of Lantir. The Commonwealth and the Principalities of Yarm share the same landmass, and are bitter rivals. The two nations spent years building towards open war, and fighting finally erupted a couple of seasons ago over the city-states of Lantir. This small independent nation, nestled between Yarm and the Commonwealth, is apparently composed of 5 powerful cities spread over 3 territories. When the Commonwealth issued an ultimatum demanding that the Lantiri gave up slavery or be embargoed by the Commonwealth, it promoted a civil war. Half of Lantir acceded to the Commonwealth's demands, and the other half opposed them, with the help of the Amish. The situation escalated back and forth, with the Lantari caught between 2 massive nations, and direct conflict seemed inevitable. The Amish refused to tolerate the Commonwealth-influenced state on their border, especially one whose former magician-heavy and Yarm-friendly government had effectively been overthrown by the intervention of their southern neighbours. Rather than allow Yarm to steal a march on them, the Commonwealth responded to a request for aid from the new government by moving 2 of their armies into Lantir. The Yarmish were left with little option but to respond in kind. Now Yarmish and Commonwealth armies have swept into the territories to do battle with each other, and the city-states reduced to little more than strategic locations to fight over. The war has been raging for 2 seasons now, but it is clear it is only just begun. Neither side seems able to defeat the other. Commonwealth hopes of a quick victory due to their superior military forces have found themselves sorely pressed by the magic employed by Yarm's innumerable powerful magicians. Despite having moved first, the Commonwealth are now on the back foot, though it is not clear the Yarmish have the capacity to press their advantage. Observers suggest it is only a matter of time before fighting breaks out elsewhere as well. There are a number of independent nations that form a buffer between the militocracy and the magocracy, and all it will take is for one of them to ally directly with one side or the other, or for either Yarm or the Commonwealth to suspect they are going to do so, and war will spread. While Militär Attaché Lieutenant does what she can to support official channels of communication, it is painfully clear that their focus is elsewhere. Their diplomatic links with the Empire are struggling as people are drafted to their departments to help with the war effort. Ambassador Schoningen formally expresses gratitude for the supportive words received from Ambassador Retzia, but they are unlikely to be very proactive in their approach to the Empire while the war with Yarm continues. Boots on the ground. The Commonwealth are requesting Imperial military captains aid them in their war against the Amish. The people of Yarm are foreigners, so this would require a motion by the Senate authorizing mercenaries to take part in the fight. With the Commonwealth locked in war with the Amish, they are appealing for the assistance of Imperial captains. The ambassador has made an impassioned plea. The Amish are slavers and need to be defeated for the common good. They understand, however, that not all Imperial captains are motivated by such selfish ideology, and that many will expect to be paid. The Commonwealth offers to provide payment, equivalent of 6 crowns for a standard military unit, with an additional crown per rank of upgrade or enchantment. There is no way for the military units to support the Commonwealth without them ending up killing Yarmish soldiers. However, the Yarmish are currently foreigners, just like the people of the Commonwealth. As a consequence, it is illegal for anyone to get involved on either side, unless the Senate is prepared to step in and express their will to the magistrates. There are legal complications, however. as with the Radon Sark proposed a few years ago and the Imperial involvement in the short-lived Asavean Civil War before that. If the Senate does nothing, no Imperial military unit will be able to support the Commonwealth and fight against the slavers of Yarm. The war between Yarm and the Commonwealth will proceed without the Empire being militarily involved. The Commonwealth will be disappointed by this obvious show of disdain for their vital interests and the fight against slavery, but they will get over it. The Senate could pass a motion with a similar wording to that used to allow Imperial military units to take part in the Asavean Civil War. They could explicitly empower military units to serve as mercenaries for the Commonwealth. If that happened, it would create a new opportunity for military units to fight against the Yarmish slavers in support of the Commonwealth. The civil service point out that direct military support for the Commonwealth via mercenaries would further antagonize the Yarmish, who would likely protest that the Senate were breaching their promise to remain neutral. The presence of Imperial mercenaries would not be enough by itself to convince the Yarmish to declare war on the Empire, but the risk would be there, and would grow greater the more clear it became that the Empire was actively aiding the Commonwealth. It's impossible to say what the outcome might be. It is difficult to assess the state of a war in a faraway land where both sides claim to have the upper hand. But if the Empire manages to send a force with a military strength of at least 3,000, then that would be enough to get a short report of the state of the war, and provide a sense of what was happening on the ground at Lantyr. The Liberty Pact. The Commonwealth remains a signatory to the Liberty Pact, but their enthusiasm for it has starkly diminished. Their view is that the pact will become completely unworkable if further smaller nations join. The Commonwealth attended the most recent meeting of the Liberty Pact with a clear agenda: to eject Axos from the pact. General Elspeth came to the Empire hoping to persuade her hosts of the need to reform the pact to ensure that it could continue to take the lead in the fight against slavery. Their view was that Axos could remain a signatory to the pact, but should not be entitled to a vote. In their view, any concerns that the Axu might have were best addressed by the Empire. The Commonwealth have accepted they were unable to convince the Empire of the need to reformulate the pact, but they did not accept they were wrong on the issues. General Elspeth appears to have been demoted, having taken the blame for the failure at the negotiating table. Ambassador Schoningen explains that the general was in command of Commonwealth forces, and she failed to deploy her forces properly, and now the Commonwealth must deal with the defeat that has wrought. Speaking frankly, the militaire attachés say they see little future for the Liberty Pact. In their opinion, the pact is already dangerously unstable. Any issue needs a majority to pass, and if any single nation sides with Axos, then it becomes impossible to outvote them. That gives a tiny nation like Axos a huge amount of power that the Commonwealth does not trust them to use wisely. The Commonwealth don't really know enough about these people to make a truly informed decision, but what they do know does not incline them to believe the Axos have any interest in serving the common good. Were they a matter for the Empire to deal with, then the Commonwealth would be content to leave it at that. There are more than a dozen tiny states allied with the Commonwealth, all of whom they see as matters for the Commonwealth to deal with in the same way that the Empire decides what is done with nations like the Thule or the Farad'n. But, as signatories to the pact, Axos become the Commonwealth's problem. They become Samar's problem. Now the Commonwealth has to care about them and what they are doing. Given what the Commonwealth has seen of them so far, they expect Axos to be a constant problem. Even that could be borne. But the future for the pact now looks dismal in their view. What happens when the Lantyri join the pact? Or the Thule? Or the Astonites? Or the Iron Confederacy? Does the caste system of the Hujurons constitute slavery? Or does the Empire really care, given there are barely enough Hujurons left to fill a town, let alone send a delegation to a meeting of the pact? The Commonwealth had absolutely no intention at all of inviting the Hujurons to join the Liberty Pact. In their mind, the last thing these meetings need is more voices. But the Empire continues to support the view that everyone should join, each getting a single vote of their own. There is a deep well of suspicion that the next time the Liberty Pact meets, they are going to be faced with an array of Imperial allies, all parroting the Imperial position, and each holding a single vote ready to back the Empire. Given that is where this seems to be going, why shouldn't the militaire attaché invite the Hujurons to join the pact? The Hujurons are dependable and entirely predictable, and they absolutely understand that the continued survival of their enclave is dependent on the Commonwealth. No one will tell them how to vote. They'll just back the Commonwealth every chance they get. Such an outcome would serve the interests of the Commonwealth on paper, but it bodes poorly for the common good. How are the great nations in the pact going to feel when they are outvoted by a dozen of the Commonwealth's most reliable allies, who decide between them that the Empire and Sumar are now required to send armies to the Commonwealth to assist them in their war against Yarm? Perhaps the Empire's commitment to this pact is so strong that their Senate will cheerfully support such a development, but militaire attaché Lutkana is frank that the Commonwealth will not, and believes that Sumar will feel the same. The militaire attaché is trying not to be too pessimistic, but their view is that General Elspeth's defeat at the hands of the Empire's diplomats has doomed the pact. As they see it, it is only a matter of time before other nations join, further diluting the power wielded by the Empire, the Commonwealth, and Sumar. When that happens, it is inevitable that the pact will vote on something that the Commonwealth cannot agree to. Were that decision being taken by the Empire and the Sumar, then it might have been possible to work out a diplomatic solution. The moment a tiny nation like Axos gets to use the pact to dictate terms to the great powers, that will be the end of the pact, at least for the Commonwealth. Ambassador Schoningen expresses their sentiment with a tone of great sadness and regret. They regard the Liberty Pact as a towering accomplishment, one of the most significant steps towards securing the greater good the world has ever seen. But they find the idea that countless millions of inhabitants of nations of the size and scale of the Empire, the Commonwealth, and Sumar could be dictated by the wishes of a few hundred corrupt wizards preposterous. The Commonwealth haven't taken any precipitous steps yet. They don't believe that the Empire's naive idealism will carry the day, but their suspicions have proven unfounded so far. Given they can leave at any time, they plan to remain for the time being, partly in hope that the pact can be saved if the Empire comes to its senses, but mostly because there is no reason to leave until something happens to force them to do so. The Weaver's Bargain. The Commonwealth expressed their gratitude towards the Empire for consulting them over the settlement of Prospero's favour. Militaire attaché Lutkana pointedly reminds the Empire that the Liberty Pact prohibits the provision of military rituals to Yarm at this time. The Commonwealth were dismayed to discover that the Empire was obliged to provide the Yarmish with a ritual due to a bargain with Prospero. Their own magicians are skilled and capable, but they are no match for the Yarmish, whose entire society is built for the benefit of the magician princes. As a result, they are outmatched magically, which is making victory in Lantir elusive. Any military rituals provided to the Yarmish by the Empire only serve to further shift the balance of the war in favour of the principalities. Militaire attaché Lutkana points out that such aid represents a violation of the terms of the Liberty Pact. Clause 8 of which clearly specifies that no signatory to the pact will provide meaningful military assistance to any nation that finds itself at war with a signatory of the pact. Providing a powerful military ritual to the Yarmish is surely the literal definition of military assistance to a nation that is at war with a signatory of the pact. However, the Commonwealth are not blind to the nature of the Autumn Realm, and they understand that if the Empire has made a deal, then it would likely have to be paid. They are not happy about it, but they have bitterly accepted that the Empire has provided the Yarmish with a powerful ritual. They are grateful that the Empire chose to give the Yarmish Find the Best Path, rather than the considerably more dangerous Brotherhood of Tian. The Yarmish being able to move armies quickly will be a problem, but nothing compared to how dangerous it would be for the Yarmish to have the capacity to resupply their armies with magic, rather than mithril or weirwood. That capability would be enough to turn the war in Yarm's favour. Militaire Rattaché Lutkanna is very clear, however, that the Commonwealth would have no choice but to consider the Liberty Pact to have been breached by the Empire if any further military rituals are traded to the Yarmish princes. Fighting talk. The Commonwealth embassy in Madruga was destroyed by the Grendel. They would prefer any replacement be built on the Bay of Katazar if possible. They are offering to oversee the construction of a fortified embassy if the Empire wishes. Militaire Rattaché Lutkanna is very pleased to hear that the Empire plans to replace the embassy in Madruga that was destroyed by the Grendel when Sirok burned. They have no strong opinion for where such an embassy might be located, but somewhere on the Bay of Katazar would be ideal, since that would be easiest for Commonwealth visitors to reach. The one stipulation is that it must not be in Redout. The ambassador expresses serious reservations about the dangers of putting Commonwealth and Yarmish embassies in anything like close proximity. They appreciate that the bay is currently a war zone, so they have a suggestion that would make the new embassy more expensive, but might make such a location more appealing to the Empire. To make it harder for the Grendel to destroy the embassy, Militaire Rattaché Lutkanna could arrange for one of the Commonwealth's architects to travel to the Empire to oversee the construction of a Diplomatenschloss. Having the Commonwealth architect oversee the project would mean the Imperial Senate would not need to use one of the limited supply of commissions to build it. This Diplomatenschloss is a specialized embassy built also to serve as a Schloss, a Commonwealth fortification. Similar to the Lyceum Schloss, but built on a much larger scale. It would house all the embassy staff, but also be sufficiently fortified that it would provide an effective defense to the region and the wider territory in case of an attack. If the Empire do build a Diplomatenschloss, then the Commonwealth will send a detachment of soldiers to garrison it, so there would be no additional upkeep beyond that of a traditional embassy. This would not only protect their staff, but would ensure they were able to help their hosts defend the territory, thus serving the greater good and aiding their allies against their enemies. Obviously, building a Diplomatenschloss would mean giving control of a powerful fortification to the Commonwealth, so the Militaire Rattaché will completely understand if the Empire chooses not to do this and to go with a traditional embassy. But they would feel it would be remiss of them not to make the offer. Star metal and mana. The Commonwealth are keen to buy Imperial mana crystals to help fuel their war against the Yarmish. To raise the funds they need, they propose to create a ministry to sell surplus Ilium. In previous seasons, the Commonwealth has at various times offered stockpiles of Bourse materials, mithril, weirwood, and white granite, in exchange for Imperial mana crystals. At the moment, any available strategic resources are being allocated to the war effort. However, Commonwealth magicians are still eager to obtain mana crystals from the Empire. Thanks in part to the significantly increased number of useful rituals they have access to, and the demands of war with Yarm. They are quickly burning through their stocks of mana, and now they are struggling to produce enough to meet their needs. Nothing is going to remove the Yarmish wizards' magical edge, but the more mana they have available, the more they can rebalance the scales and allow the crushing strength of their military forces to achieve victory. Having assessed what they can afford to spare, Militaire Rattaché Lutkanna proposes to sell Ilium to the Empire. After discussions with the civil service, she is offering to make available enough Ilium to support a trading position that could buy significant amounts of Ilium direct from the Commonwealth. To enable the trade, the Empire would need to commission and build the Sternen Metal Tower, based on requirements presented by the Commonwealth. The commission would be a small fortified tower designed to ensure that the precious Ilium was well protected. It would serve as a ministry, allowing the title appointed to oversee the position to purchase Ilium each season. The Commonwealth staff at the Sternen Metal Tower would in turn use the monies raised to purchase magical materials, mana and viz, from Imperial traders. Constitutionally, the position would need to be appointed through the Imperial Bourse. The Commonwealth are keen to keep closer links with individual imperial nations and have insisted that the Sternen Metal Merchant be a national appointment. They don't mind which nation it is, so it could be built anywhere in the Empire. Commonwealth merchants intend to use magic similar to ethereal courier to send and receive the mana crystals and ilium involved. As a national position, it would need to be elected by tally of the votes appropriate to the nation involved for it to function. The Monroe Doctrine. Commonwealth civil servants are somewhat suspicious of imperial ambitions in Rakensgrab, in the Sea of Steel. Ambassador Schoningen expresses surprise and concern at discovering that Imperial fleet captains are setting sail for the northern Sea of Steel to investigate the situation there after the destruction of Rakensgrab. After the combined forces of the Liberty Pact attacked the area of the slave lords, the Commonwealth took in most of those who had been freed, who had nowhere else to go. This made sense at the time, because the island is located in the Sea of Steel, much closer to the Commonwealth than the Empire. Most of the slaves freed from Rakensgrab have made a home there since being freed, grateful for an opportunity for a new life. Those who chose not to stay have fanned out across the known world, or returned to their homes in nations around the Sea of Steel. There is little reason to imagine much remains in Rakensgrab. The island is made of a large and mostly lawless archipelago, but there is no large power there, nor any population of slaves in need of freeing or help. As such, there is a degree of concern about imperial interest. What is it the Empire is hoping to achieve here? Given the island lies far from imperial waters but relatively close to the Commonwealth, there is some suspicion over imperial interest in part of the world the Commonwealth considers its backyard. Whatever happens, the civil service cautions that imperial ships should be prudent in their actions there, lest Commonwealth suspicion turn to annoyance at the Empire blundering into an area they see as being inside their sphere of influence. Storm Warning. Ambassador Lucia Sanguinio Rezia de Tacito has warned the Commonwealth that ships visiting the Bay of Catazar risk being caught in magical storms. It seems the Imperial Ambassador issued a warning to the Commonwealth via the office of Militaire Rattaché Lucana that powerful magic storms are expected to wreck the Bay of Catazar following the spring equinox. It seems their counterpart took the warning seriously. As a consequence, there have been significantly fewer Commonwealth ships risking the journey to the Empire. The presence of large numbers of violent Grendel in the bay had already made trade somewhat difficult. But between the freeborn corsairs and the Commonwealth's own hardened marines, there were still plenty of merchants prepared to risk the waters for lucrative trade with the Empire. In the face of this warning, however, Commonwealth merchants have gone elsewhere for the time being, and Militaire Rattaché Lucana wishes to pass on the thanks of several of the larger trading houses to Ambassador Lucia. Gatekeepers. The gatekeepers appear to be embroiled in a long-running argument between Commonwealth philosophers and theologians. The Militaire Rattaché has apparently been attempting to unravel a new development in a long-standing debate within the Commonwealth. There are signs that some of those involved have attempted to drag imperial citizens into it, specifically the Council of Gatekeepers. The Militaire Rattaché says that the exact substance of the disagreement is very complicated, but the essence of it is that a site of historical significance within the Commonwealth is under the influence of an enduring spiritual aura. The culture of the Commonwealth disapproves of such things, and there have been conflicts between those who want the site preserved as it is, aura and all, and those who wish to see it removed. Apparently, one of the groups who want the aura removed have been making approaches to the gatekeepers, attempting to acquire a dose of true liao to effect the plans without the consent of the site's owners. According to what embassy staff have been able to piece together, this has hit a dead end. The Militaire Rattaché wishes to pass on their gratitude to the gatekeepers for not inflaming a delicate situation. The general attitude of the authorities is that continuing the argument is less destructive than resolving it would be, and the Empire's decision to avoid interfering is much appreciated.